today I will host the event together with Surgeon. We have also invited an amazing speaker, Dr. Asma Soltani, to give us some insights into her project and the career as a clinical research fellow. So WiN-UK is the first network founded by Lizzie, our founder here, specially designed for female neuroscientists, aiming to improve the access, experience, retention, and success of women and other diverse groups in neuroscience. And we have members joining from all over the UK or even outside the UK. And today, we will listen to Dr. Soltani about her amazing talk on which will be followed by a question and answer session. And after this, we would have our Christmas quiz session where there will be different questions and participants will all answer them. And among this, we would select the top scorers and there will be a prize, and I will just keep it secret for now, and Surgeon will introduce more details on the prize announcement. And we will also have a 15 minutes like networking session at the end to offer you the opportunity to talk to all the amazing people around us today. So now let's welcome our great speaker, Dr. Soltani, who is a research fellow in the Department of Physiology, Development and Neuroscience at University of Cambridge. She also focuses on the impacts of genetic mutations in conditions such as Rett syndrome and autism, and is working to identify core principles of cortical neuronal network development and to test the therapeutic interventions. So welcome, Asma. So I will end the sharing, and you
Thank you very much, Yin. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. I was really pleased to hear about this network gathering women. And from what I understand, it's quite a young network. So I hope that I will have a very long and prosperous life. So I think now I should be able to share my slides. So the talk will be about 20 minutes. I will try and keep it to 15 minutes because I'd be really, I think that the questions and just discussion will be the more interesting bit. So when Yin invited me to talk about my research, and she also mentioned you can do something about career, and I found the career bit a little bit more interesting. The research and the science is of course interesting, but there are not that many places and like forums where you can actually share about more the practical side of being a researcher, and especially a woman in STEM. There are, thank God, more and more, but when it happens, usually you have a lot of senior people, very established professors, and so it can be a little bit intimidating, whereas here, from what I could see, they were quite young and early career researchers, so I think that's really great, and thank you for the founders for making this possible. Okay, so my primary job is actually a doctor and not really a researcher. So I'm a pediatric neurologist and I work at Addenbrooke's Hospital. So I see children with neurological disorders, and among them neurodevelopmental disorders. I started my journey as to talk a little bit about work-life balance and how do you actually do that. And especially as a woman, I think now it is becoming more and more talked about, but that doesn't change the reality. And it will probably take a long time before we even like start to reach equality between men and women. And that is really one of the things that is in your way as a woman. And there's no denying in that. That does not mean that you can't succeed, but recognizing it and actually is the first step to actually tackle it properly. So peer-to-peer mentoring is really important. And when you're more junior, you might not realize, and sometimes you can approach it as someone who's going to evaluate you. That is not the case. Your mentor is here like purely to help you and to give you directions. And I would say that having a mentor who is a woman does make a difference. Not always, but there are certain things that that are more easily, that you can talk about maybe a little bit more easily, or that they can understand and give you some tips and advice that is a little bit more practical. Financial planning and advice, and especially when you go less than full time, when you go on maternity leave, all of these things you need to find about, and that takes time. So one of the ways to actually make that a little bit easier is to gather in forums like this one and chat about what does that mean to go on maternity leave? How am I going to be paid? As simple as that, but it's key. How long can I take maternity leave for? How can I then, when I come back, can I do shared parental leave? Yes, you can. And you can do that for a long time. So you have 52 weeks of maternity and parental leave. And if you come back before the 52 weeks, you can expand the leftover weeks. For example, if you come back after 6 months, if you have 6 months left and you share it with your partner, then that can become a year. So another year where you still have parental leave, and that makes a big difference. You have work-based childcare, and the university also has a lot of benefits for childcare. So really worth looking into it and asking HR about it, or other peer women. And then also challenge the established ways of doing things. As simple as, for example, when I came back from maternity leave, and my little one's 1.5 years, there was no place where I was still breastfeeding him. And there was no place where I could pump any milk or even store it. So initially they said, oh, okay, you can go into that room. Great. There was no fridge. There was no sink. There was it was just, and all of that does take time. And initially it was just, if I didn't insist, there were no solutions apparently. So really challenging it and saying, no, this is what I want, and I'm sure that it is possible. And then people do find solutions, and now it's there, and it will be there for other women, hopefully. All right, so I think these are some of the things that I wanted to touch on. And if there are any questions, and I'm not sure how long I've taken, maybe if you could let me know how long I have left.
That's all right. We have enough time for questions.
Okay. Yes, so I might not have time to talk about the research bit, but I'm happy just to take questions now because it's already 25 past. So any questions, please. Stunned silence.
Would I be able to ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Lakavi, and I'm currently a second-year medical neuroscience student studying at the University of Sussex, and I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you so much for giving it, by the way. So my question is, I'm also an aspiring medic as well, and I think your role in being both a doctor and a researcher is quite unique, and I've never met someone who's in your position. So the question I want to ask is, how do you think your experiences in being a doctor, so in peds, has influenced the way that you see research, and what kind of experiences has influenced the research that you're doing currently?
Thank you for that question. So the way it influences me, to be honest, is that I very often think about the patients. And I also, I do regular clinics where I see patients with neurodevelopmental disorders, but also more like common disorders such as epilepsy or dystonia, things like that. And what I see in the clinic really feeds into what I do research-wise. In terms of every patient is unique, And sometimes seeing them developing certain symptoms would prompt me to read more about that and find out, is that something actually that would be expected in that case or not? Is there something really interesting about this patient? And especially when you have facilities such as like genetics, that can really make a big change for how you manage that patient, but also how you think about your research. And thinking about the neurological disorders as separate is actually is a biased way of looking at it. It's very likely that all of these are actually interconnected, and the pathways that you are looking at are interconnected. So seeing patients and seeing how the phenotype is, I think really is helpful and keeps me kind of like grounded and prevents me from oversimplifying sometimes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
I think I could ask this question the other way around. How do you feel like your research influences the fact, like your clinical work? Do you feel like you are, I don't know, a better doctor because you know so much about what's going on behind because you do research? Does it change how you act in a clinical setting?
That's a very good question. Yes, it does. It does change how I see things. And I'm definitely, I would say, more research-minded than my colleagues. That makes me like think about something that I wanted to talk about, but the way the qualities you need as a doctor and the qualities you need as a researcher are actually sometimes antagonists. So in the clinical world, you have a lot of guidelines, you have a lot of established ways, and especially for diseases that we know very well, you have stepwise approaches. You have NICE guidelines, like national guidelines, and that has a good reason, is because some disorders we know very well how to treat them, and in, for example, 90% of the cases, this first step will work. Also, patient safety is at the center of what we do. So all of these guidelines have that also at the heart of it, making sure that your patients remain safe. So you have to be very good at following guidelines. As a researcher, you need to challenge established knowledge, and sometimes something that we thought was that way and your data is telling you otherwise, you must not ignore it and you must investigate it further. So it does change the way I do things, and I find it like sometimes switching from one to the other is very good gymnastic. But yes, it does change. And for example, I have been part of with other clinician scientists, and like you were saying that you've not met someone there's loads of people who do research and clinical work. And we have a network at the hospital where we've been pushing very hard to have more clinical trials. So it needs a lot of resources to be a center where you recruit patients into clinical trials. And in Addenbrooke's, we've not had that much of that. There's loads of it happening in adults, a lot less in pediatrics. So the fact that I can see how the research and how fast-paced the research is, especially in neurosciences, and with my colleagues who agree with me, we've been really pushing that so that we can have clinical trials happen more often in Addenbrooke's. So yeah.
I have a curiosity question. I was wondering if sort of diving deep into research sort of also gives you a better understanding of the translation gap now that you've sort of seen both worlds.
Yes.
Does it sort of give you a better insight onto how we could reduce that in the future?
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is really a gap in, again, like the ways of thinking in both worlds. Also, the lack of, how to say, not will, but people who would find a common language. Because the way that things happen in the hospital is very fast-paced. And things like, if something takes like a couple of months, that's a long time. In the research, if things take 5 years, that's, especially in biology, that's not a long time. So loads of like little things like that seem obvious for the researchers and seem obvious on the other side for the doctor, that of course we're not going to wait 5 years. On the other side is like, nothing is going to get done in 3 months. These things can lead to a lot of like misunderstanding and a lot of frustration. There are loads of other things, but yes, having that insight now, I do try to keep both things in mind. And when I talk to someone from that world or the other one, that I make sure that I sometimes, how to say, just like speak the obvious, which might be obvious to me, but maybe not to them.
Thank you.
I might take another question and then I probably will have to run.
I may ask one last question. So from your perspective, what do you see as the future, like kind of bridging the clinical side and the scientific side?
So I think having also some researchers, especially researchers who work on disease, actually come and see the clinical world, because so far the clinicians are coming to the lab, and I think that does make sense. But also actually going and seeing, like, for example, shadowing clinics, or seeing like, how does it work? Like, you know, there are also some events, for example, the Rare Fest, which is, or the Rare Diseases Festival in Cambridge, where it's all about rare diseases, where you can meet clinicians, but also patients and families, and listen to talks which are at the heart of the research, but will not be about research data, maybe. I think that would also help bridge the gap. So, and even if you're not doing research on a disease, if you're doing research on a physiological phenomenon, just, yes, trying to find these places and go to these places where you can actually meet the people that you might be impacting the lives of. I think that really is, would make a change, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Asma.
Thank you for having me.
Talk.
Well, sorry, I can't stay for the Christmas quiz. I'm really curious about the gift, though. You'll have to throw me in tomorrow.
Yeah, I will.
All right, good luck, everyone. Thank you for having me again. Have a good evening.
You too. Have a nice
Bye.
evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Before we wrap up and do the networking, we would like to inform you about a couple of upcoming events. So our events generally are structured in the form of monthly talks from women in the network. We basically focus on 3 themes. So the first one is dealing with research. So we invite speakers, specifically women in academia, who talk about their current and latest research projects, their data. Also, we have a section on reality, which basically involves talks more on work-life balance and advice how to sort of inculcate a better mental health, and advice from women in general. And the third section is networking, which basically is just coffee catch up and like an informal chat with the incredible women that we have in our network now. Do not miss out on any future events. So sign up on our forms, and also feel free to sort of contact us through this email ID if you have any questions. We are always happy to answer. For January, to begin 2023 with, for our scientific talks, we have a mental health and academia themed event, which will be paneled by Dr. Jelena Brasnak, who's a postdoctoral researcher at Humboldt University in Berlin. And she's also the founder of Dragonfly Mental Health, which is a mental health organization focusing on inculcating better work-life balance in early career researchers, and also how to sort of navigate the stigma around mental health. So we are very much looking forward to inviting not only her, but also to sort of create a panel with other women who work in this area. And of course, it will be followed up by with a networking session. So watch out for that. And lastly, I would just like to, on behalf of the team, like to propose that we always love if you stay in touch with us. So follow us on our socials. We have an Instagram, a LinkedIn, a TikTok, and also a YouTube channel. Of course, if you have any questions, you can write to the general email ID. For event-specific questions, we are always there, and you can write to the events email. And if you're interested in contributing to a blog, feel free to share your work with the blog team. We're always looking out for new writers, and yeah, see you in 2023 then. Thank you, and we can just continue the networking now, I guess. Oh, and the feedback form, sorry. Please scan the QR code, or I think Yin is going to paste the link now in the chat. We will be very happy if you could take 2 minutes and give us a brief feedback of how you felt today's event was, so we can improve for our future events, and also see what you liked and what you did not like. So please feel free to now give us a little feedback, and happy to network now.
Thank you so much, Sachin.
Of course.